Alright, y'all. So today I want to do a very quick review of Wonder Man. This is a new 8 episode MCU series that came out with episodes ranging from 30 minutes to 35 minutes to 25 minutes. And basically, it's kind of this, like I said, it's the brand new MCU show. It's introducing the character of Wonder Man. Now, going into this series, I really didn't really know too much about Wonder Man. I'm going to be frank here. The only experience I've had with the character is I had some comic books when I was a kid from the Avengers and Defenders. And I remember Wonder Man being one of the big characters that was introduced in the Avengers comics. But beyond that, I mean, I really haven't seen him in much stuff. He's a character that I'm not exactly hugely familiar with in the Marvel Universe, but I know he is pretty powerful. He can kind of emit shock waves and ionic energy and stuff. So, regardless, not the most popular character. And going into this series, they were kind of playing. The concept of it is basically it's a struggling actor by the name of Simon Williams who teams up with the Mandarin, or at least the original, not the original, but the Mandarin that we all thought, and it was the fake one, Trevor Slattery. Even though secretly he is spying on Simon for this organization that's basically designed to supervise superpowered individuals. These two friends form a relationship over the love of acting, being actors looking for work, talking about the craft, and they're trying their hand at becoming, basically getting a role to a massive new movie in the MCU universe called Wonder Man. See the meta thing kind of playing right there. Wonder Man is not actually initially in the comics, right? From what I understand, he was a bad guy originally. He was created by bad guys. And then he kind of fights the Avengers, then he joins the Avengers, and then he becomes an actor. In this show, it's the other way around. Wonder Man is a fake superhero. It was a popular movie in the 80s in the MCU, and they're basically remaking it in like 2026 in that universe, right? I'm assuming that's the year the show is set in modern times. And Simon Williams is actually trying to get the lead role of Wonder Man in this remake. So like I said, it's a little bit meta, but really for what the concept is and what it's trying to do. And I'm going to go, of course, go into my pros and my cons and my overall thoughts on this. But my initial impressions of this 8 episode series, it's really good. This is one of the best Marvel shows, I guess anything projects that I've seen from them in a long time. The story was really compelling. It was interesting. They used the concept effectively. It's not really so much of a superhero show, like it is, but it's not like, there's a big action sequence in this show, Simon fights some big, villain or something, or there's some sprawling action sequences. There's like really hardly the no action in this entire series. Like there's a few moments where Simon uses his powers, and I'll get into that later. But for the most part, it's a pretty small scaled, limited series. It's basically about these actors, with these two characters, discussing their love for acting, why they do it, and trying to get the role of a lifetime. And it's, like I said, really well executed. They kind of start out, and I don't know if I already said it before, but with the pros of this series, the story is really good. I thought it was really engaging. I thought all the characters were really well developed, and their interactions felt very natural. Simon Williams, the actor who plays him, does a fantastic job. Trevor Slattery, obviously the actor who plays him, does a really good job. Like I said before, there's many things about this show. The acting is really good. I like this. Trevor Slattery is such a good character in this series. He starts out from a place of trying to avoid prison and being a foreman on someone, then to bond with this person, get into a sort of not like, physical romantic relationship, but just sort of a bro relationship, right? And basically, discover his love of acting because, throughout the MCU, he became famous for the Mandarin, and he's been kind of shuffled off to all these side quests in the universe. And now he comes back to LA discovering and, trying to reignite his love of acting. Same thing with Simon. It is a really cool thing, and I like Simon's arc as well. His parents not understanding him, his brother especially not getting why he's doing acting, and just in general, you know, the whole feeling of wanting to be in the movies is captured perfectly here. And I feel like a lot of people who like movies, who are obsessed with the culture in Hollywood, will love this movie and absolutely relate to it. Especially, like you said, when you see Simon as a kid watching the Wonder Man film in the MCU that from the 80s, and seeing that sparkle in his eye to become an actor. It's just something really great to see. And like I said, when you have a goal, when you have a dream, and you're just willing to do anything despite the obstacles to get it, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that feeling. And like I said, many of these elements are in this show. And I really, like I said, love the acting. I love the story. I like how at the end of the show, Simon does indeed get to play, big quotes here, Wonder Man in the remake. It's a great and interesting arc, and I like how the characters progress through that, and I also like how the world is developed in this series. It was really well done. And there's some standout episodes, here and there. For example, I like how in the show, they basically take a whole episode to explain the doorman thing, which is, like I said, it's basically an elaborate backstory to why superheroes can't work in the industry because of this incident that happened with this fictitious character. I'm not I'm not sure if he's a real Marvel inspired character. But he's, like I said, the reason why superheroes can't work in the industry and all these obstacles Simon faces. It was really cool, and it was well developed, and it makes a lot of sense. I felt the chemistry, of course, between the main actors was good. I also like, too, some of the twists and turns in the story. I think the funniest twist is probably when they go to this dude's house, Simon and Trevor, and we're all thinking, like, oh, this is like a drug operation, but then turns out this is like a big chamoy operation, which is, of course, those Mexican candies and stuff, which are also, I've tried. They are pretty good. That was a pretty funny little twist, and I've liked that. I like, the scenes, too, where Simon uses his powers. Now, they are quite far and few between. This show barely has any action, but I think when it does happen, it is very well shot, it's well executed, and it shows really how powerful Simon is, especially near the end of the series where he blows up the studio in anger after he finds out that Trevor was spying on him the entire time and being an informant. But in that case, Trevor had changed. He really loved Simon in his pursuit of acting and decided to sort of give up everything and take the fall for him, so to speak, which is just, like I said, great stuff. You can arguably say that it kind of plays out like a rom-com, which I've heard from other people, but honestly, like I said, I'm not complaining about that. I think the relationship between these two characters was really good and well developed. Their friendship felt very natural. I think the episodes, too, were pretty well structured. I think that, they felt, even though they're short, I think they definitely didn't overstay their welcome. This is a pretty nice and easy series to get into. In a lot of ways, it's still very well connected to the MCU, but also in a lot of ways it isn't. If you haven't, like I say, if you don't know who Wonder Man is, you don't know a lot about the characters, you can completely get into this series. Like I said, it works really well. And even, like I said, we even get to see the supposed Wonder Man remake suit, which Simon wears at the end. Now, I'm pretty sure this might be the suit if Wonder Man ever appears in future stuff. He would just kind of take that suit from the remake, and basically the whole thing, he's going to become an actual superhero. But we'll wait to see if Marvel actually uses his character and stuff. But the suit looked pretty good. I liked it. It was a nice modern take on it, but also being faithful to the original comics, at least more of the newer stuff. And I don't know, like I said, I think this was a very well crafted and interesting story. I really can't sing enough of the praise about this series, and I really don't have any cons for it. It was a well done story. There's a lot of symbolism here. I like, like I said, the whole struggle of your art and pursuing your dreams in a lot of ways can relate to pretty much everyone on the planet. Like, for example, if you want to be the best basketball star ever, you can relate to this series. And of course, if you love movies like myself, this series, of course, even speaks to you further. In terms of cons, this is one of the best MCU shows I've seen in a long time. I don't really know how to rank it, but that being said, in terms of cons, I don't really have too many cons with this series. It was a really well done concept. It was well executed. Even the superhero commentary in this show. Now, there's not, like I said, so much of it. Like, it doesn't become like a meta Deadpool thing, but there is some slight commentary to it all, which I thought was pretty funny and interesting. In terms of cons, I mean, the really only thing I could really say off the top of my head I can complain about is, number one, I wish there was more episodes. I hope we get a season 2 to this. And number two, I think we really need to get into the more of the Wonder Man power sets and his abilities and how to control them, and of course maybe see Simon Williams transition to an actual superhero. And like I said, that's not really a criticism on this series because the series is not really focused on that. It's focused, of course, on the story, the journey, the growth of this actor who's been struggling to actually make it big and land a leading role in the Wonder Man remake. I'm just hoping that with a season 2, which, like I said, I'm not sure if they're going to do it, or a future MCU project if he shows up in it, that they actually talk about how his transition to a superhero is. And I mean, like I said, if they do indeed to make a season 2, I mean, that's your plot right there, man. The whole season 2 could be about him becoming a superhero. We just don't. We get a little taste of that at the end of the series when he rescues Trevor, which was a great scene, by the way. And I like his whole thing with the Simon knowing these random people and stuff. It was really well executed, that whole last episode. The only thing I can really say is, I hope that we get to see more of his superhero stuff. We get to see the transition to his superhero stuff if they continue to make this. And like I said, maybe too, if Marvel wants to have more fun with this concept, maybe make a little short film of Simon Williams in the Wonder Man remake. Like maybe make a fake trailer or a fake short film just to kind of showcase what his performance and the plot of that supposed remake could have been. Like I said, I'm just kind of nitpicking here. It's not even really big deals because the show itself and the story that they tell is so well executed. I'm only criticizing things that are just really, not too deep in the show itself. They're just kind of nitpicks. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Wonder Man. I highly recommend it if you've kind of given up on some Marvel MCU stuff lately. This is one of the best MCU things I've seen in a long time. I'm just going to be frank here. It was better than the recent Captain America. It was better than some of the recent movies. Highly recommend this series. It's very well executed, well crafted. It was a good story. But yeah, my thoughts on Wonder Man from 2026 in the MCU. All right, y'all. Peace.